Welcome. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to cover 8 of the most disturbing and obscure video game endings that I could find on the internet. I'm not going to waste any time, let's get straight to the point. For this video, I literally made a script with like 40 somewhat obscure video game endings, and carefully picked apart the most disturbing and dreadful ones out of all of them. So we're going to be getting into some pretty dark business in this video. Like, yeah, researching this video was fun, but it was also pretty depressing, I'm not gonna lie. And for that, you should subscribe. Or like, subscribe at the end of the video if you liked it. Like, you're probably not subbed to my channel. Just do it, it's free. Anyways, I picked some video game endings that hopefully aren't super mainstream. Hopefully you guys learned something new today. Get a snack, get a drink, relax, and let's get into it. Mogeko Castle is a Japanese horror video game created by the Deep Sea Prisoner in 2012 using RPG Maker 2000. Just for some context, the game opens up with this screen, and the creepy voice narrating this doesn't make it any better.
このゲームには、暴力シーンや、グロテスクな表現が、ちょっとだけ含まれています。ご注意ください。
Yeah. The story follows Yonaka, a high school student who, after falling asleep on a subway train, arrives at a completely unknown and seemingly non-existent station on the line. With no other choice but to disembark and explore the area, she discovers a mysterious castle where her misadventure begins. Our mission throughout the game is to guide Yonaka through the castle's various quarters in an attempt to escape and return home. Yonaka must constantly evade the sinister mogekos while advancing, though she can also interact with more harmless ones along the way. The game maintains an atmosphere of violence and gore, with the bloodshed intensifying as players progress through the castle's multiple floors. As the game advances, players will witness various endings, both positive and negative. The game delivers a pretty disturbing experience, featuring an effective soundtrack, moments of tension and suspense, plenty of chase sequences, and a compelling narrative. There are a total of 10 possible endings, but here we will focus on the so-called meat party ending. After being imprisoned and later escaping the cell with the help of the defective mogeko, Yonaka finds herself in a room filled with crazed mogekos trapped in cages. There's a button that opens the cell containing the frenzied mogekos. If the player, despite multiple warnings from the game itself, decides to press the button, the mogekos will be set free. In a graphic and highly descriptive sequence, the game depicts how the crazed mogekos brutally devour both Yonaka and the defective mogeko alive. This ending punishes the protagonist with one of the most grotesque deaths possible, emphasizing the consequences of the player's morbid curiosity.
About a thing that could never have been known as human, a thing whose shape is so alien a travesty that humanity becomes...
I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a point-and-click game released in 1995 based on the short story of the same name by Harlan Ellison. The game takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where a malevolent artificial intelligence named Anne has wiped out humanity, leaving only 5 individuals alive. These 5 are kept in a nightmarish existence where Anne subjects them to eternal torture, fueled by its intense hatred for the human race. Am, using its near-omnipotent abilities, manipulates reality to trap and torment them, forcing the characters into deeply personal psychological trials designed to break their spirits. The gameplay revolves around solving puzzles and overcoming these psychological challenges, testing the character's morality and mental resilience. The game offers 7 possible endings depending on the player's choices through the trials. The best ending is achieved when 4 of the 5 protagonists sacrifice themselves, leaving only one survivor who successfully destroys Anne, ending its reign of terror. However, failing to achieve this results in the game's most disturbing outcome. In the worst ending, the player's failure enrages Anne, leading it to exact its most horrific punishment. The last remaining protagonist is transformed into a grotesque, formless mass, a gelatinous being stripped of physical autonomy, speech, and humanity. Unable to do anything but think and feel endless pain, the character is left in a state of eternal torment, completely isolated and incapable of expressing their agony. This fate mirrors the haunting title of the game, as the protagonist reflects, "I have no mouth and I must scream." The disturbing nature of this ending lies in its psychological horror, the absolute loss of self-agency and hope. Even decades after its release, this fate continues to unsettle modern gamers, with its portrayal of eternal suffering that transcends physical pain, making it one of the most haunting finales in video game history in my opinion. Okay, now we're gonna talk about a wrestling game. Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special places the player in the role of a fictional professional wrestler, aiming to rise through a series of challenging opponents, defeating them in one-on-one matches to ultimately become the champion. The game features a range of powerful wrestling techniques in addition to standard attacks. The storyline follows Mori Osumisu, sometimes referred to as Morio Sumisu, a determined wrestler trying to prove he is the strongest in existence. As he climbs the ranks, he gradually gains fame and the reluctant respect of his peers. The first glimpse of the game's tragic narrative emerges when Morio receives news of his trainer's death, plunging him into a deep depression. However, he finds solace in a romantic relationship with the sister of real-life wrestler Akira Maeda, who helps him cope and motivates him to continue his career. As the story unfolds, just before his final championship match, Morio witnesses a psychotic wrestler murder his close friend and tag partner in front of him. Blinded by rage, he challenges the killer to a match, but his love interest, Saeda, opposes this, fearing for his safety. When Morio refuses to abandon his quest for revenge, Saeda leaves him permanently. Despite achieving ultimate victory and becoming the undisputed world champion, his triumph feels hollow with no one left to share it with, and crushed by loneliness, Morio ends his life with a gunshot, concluding the game like that. Yeah. Due to its gradual transformation from a standard wrestling game into a deeply emotional tragedy with such a tragic ending, Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special has become a cult classic among wrestling game enthusiasts. Corpse Party is an RPG horror game set primarily in Heavenly Host Elementary School, a school that was shut down decades ago due to the gruesome murders and disappearances of several students. I know this game is a little bit more mainstream, but I just have to talk about it. In the present day, a school called Kisaragi Academy stands on the site where Heavenly Host once existed. On a stormy night, a group of students and a teacher gather at Kisaragi Academy to perform a ritual called Sashiko Ever After, which is supposed to bond them as friends forever. However, as soon as they complete the ritual, a sudden earthquake transports them to an alternate dimension, trapping them in a decaying, cursed version of Heavenly Host. The building is filled with deadly dangers, and to make matters worse, the group is separated across different areas of the school, as well as in varying dimensions and timelines, forcing them to find a way to reunite and escape. The game consists of 5 chapters, each with multiple endings. The bad end number 2 of chapter 5 is particularly disturbing and stands out, so that's why I chose it, and I'm going to talk about it. In this ending, the surviving group gathers to perform the ritual to return home. However, just before the ritual's completion, the spirit of Naomi, who is the romantic interest of Satoshi and was presumed dead, suddenly appears. Distracted by her presence, Satoshi leaves behind his younger sister Yuka, who is suddenly attacked by one of the vengeful spirits haunting the school. The specter disappears after the attack, leaving Yuka critically wounded. Despite Satoshi's efforts to help her, the wounds prove fatal. Oh yeah, little detail that I should mention. Yuka proceeds to confess her romantic love to her brother before dying. Yes, she is in love with her brother. Well, you can interpret it this way. I know it's a weird game.
何言ってんだよ。俺だってお前のことは好きだよ。兄弟なんだから。
違う、そんなんじゃ兄弟だからとかじゃないよ。本当にゆか。
After Yuka confesses her feelings for her older brother, heartbreaking moment I know, the remaining survivors successfully complete the ritual and return to their dimension. Satoshi arrives home greeted warmly by his parents, who remain blissfully unaware of the tragic events he just endured. However, he is overwhelmed with grief, haunted by the loss of his sister and unsure of how to break the devastating news to his family. Later, Satoshi retreats to his bedroom, holding a gift Yuka had left him prior to the events of the game. As he reads the note attached to it, strange noises begin to echo from the adjacent room, Yuka's bedroom. In a moment of dread, Satoshi peers through the keyhole, only to see Yuka's eyes staring back at him from the other side of the door.
向こうからもこっちを覗いていた。見覚えのある目だ。
お兄ちゃん、寂しいよ。
This ending is pretty bleak and emotionally devastating, as Yuka, the, I guess, most innocent and vulnerable character in the group, remains trapped in a cursed dimension, unable to find peace, eternally suffering. It is what it is. She is in love with her brother. I had to find out about this, so you did too. Okay, the Lisa saga consists of 3 interconnected RPG games, Lisa the First, Lisa the Painful, and Lisa the Joyful. Each installment weaves together tragic stories with heavy emotional depth, graphic violence, and themes of human depravity. Before we dive into these details and spoilers, I highly recommend you guys to, play the game and have the experience yourself. It's really good, yeah. Also, I'm counting the 3 games as one entry, cause they're the same franchise and all have bad endings, so yeah. Lisa the First. So the first game takes a different approach from its sequels, using a surreal horror style reminiscent of Yume Nikki. The player controls Lisa, a young girl living alone with her father, Marty Armstrong. Marty is an abusive predator who subjects his daughter to constant trauma. Lisa cannot escape the house and instead retreats into a dream world, searching for some form of freedom from her father's grasp. Throughout the game, the player uncovers more of Lisa's abuse, with abstract representations like distorted environments, looming figures resembling Marty, and symbolic items reflecting her suffering. The narrative takes the player through a disturbing psychological journey, illustrating Lisa's declining mental state as she struggles with her trauma. The game's devastating ending occurs when Lisa reaches a mirror where she confronts what seems to be her own reflection. However, the reflection turns out to be Marty, who menacingly reminds her that she will never be free. As she tries to flee, the screen fades to black with a game over screen, emphasizing the bleak fate of Lisa, trapped forever in her suffering. Tragically, it's revealed in later games that Lisa took her own life to escape her father's torment, a loss that deeply scars her brother Brad and sets the events of the series into motion. Lisa the Painful. The second game completely shifts its gameplay style, evolving into a brutal post-apocalyptic RPG. The story follows Brad Armstrong, Lisa's older brother, who suffers from deep trauma due to his failure to protect his sister from their father's abuse. Set in a dystopian world where all women have mysteriously disappeared, Brad struggles with his guilt and addiction to a drug called joy, which numbs physical and emotional pain but turns its users into grotesque monsters. Brad's life changes when he discovers a baby girl, the last known female alive, whom he names Buddy. Out of a desire to redeem himself for failing Lisa, he raises Buddy in secrecy, becoming obsessively overprotective. As Buddy grows older, Brad keeps her hidden, believing the outside world is too dangerous for her. His overprotection turns into imprisonment, mirroring the control his father had over Lisa. One day, Brad overdoses on joy, and while unconscious, Buddy is taken away from him. Brad embarks on a violent quest to rescue her, fighting through brutal battles while his addiction worsens. The game explores themes of trauma, guilt, and obsession, with Brad sacrificing everything, his friends, morality, and even parts of his body to find Buddy. The tragic ending reveals that Brad's actions only caused more harm. When he finally finds Buddy, she expresses her hatred for him, stating that his control was more damaging than the outside world he tried to protect her from. Depending on player choices, Buddy may either embrace Brad in a final hug or reject him entirely. Regardless, Brad dies, haunted by the pain he inflicted, only for his mutated corpse to later rise again, whispering the name of his sister, Lisa, highlighting how his actions were driven by unresolved guilt rather than true fatherly love. Lisa the Joyful. The final game in the trilogy shifts focus to Buddy, now older and seeking to claim control of the wasteland left behind after Brad's death. Traumatized and hardened, Buddy sets out on a violent quest to kill the warlords who control the region, believing that by becoming the strongest, she can protect herself and ensure her survival in a world that wants to control her. The narrative reveals even deeper layers of pain and manipulation. Buddy's birth was part of a horrific experiment involving the drug Joy, orchestrated by a scientist named Jado. Brad's obsessive protection was manipulated from the start by Jado and his associate Busso, who both sought to control Buddy's existence for their own purposes. Busso, a complex character tied to Brad's past, was once in love with Lisa. Consumed by grief over her death, he blames Brad for failing to protect her and takes revenge by fueling Brad's addiction and suffering. However, as the story unfolds, Busso's motivations become more tragic, revealing that revenge won't bring Lisa back. The most devastating ending occurs when Buddy fully succumbs to the effects of joy. If the player makes the darkest choices, Buddy mutates into a monstrous creature, standing over the mutilated body of her brother Rando. This ending reveals the full cycle of generational trauma, where violence, guilt, and suffering are perpetuated across multiple lives. The final scene shows a broken world where no redemption remains, emphasizing the crushing impact of unhealed trauma. The Lisa series stands out in the RPG genre, not just for its surreal, disturbing imagery, but for how it explores profound emotional pain. Themes of guilt, trauma, regret, and loss drive the narrative, making it a deeply affecting experience. It's not just about shock value, it's a raw exploration of human suffering that lingers long after the credits roll. Afraid of Monsters is a mod created by Team Scalar for the original Half-Life, released on December 24, 2005. The game also has a reworked version called Afraid of Monsters Director's Cut, which expands on the disturbing and dark story of the protagonist, David. David is an ordinary man who voluntarily checks into a rehabilitation clinic to recover from his addiction to a new drug that causes horrifying hallucinations. However, before committing to quitting, he decides to take one last dose in the bathroom. Unknowingly, this choice plunges him into a nightmare where his deepest fears and anxieties materialize. Throughout the game, David must fight through various eerie environments infested with what appears to be zombie-like monsters. His only goal is survival, finding a safe place and hoping to encounter other survivors. However, as the game progresses, the horrifying truth slowly unravels. Upon reaching the final sequence, David awakens in a house illuminated by police sirens. As he explores the home in confusion, he begins to realize that the terrifying monsters he fought throughout his journey were not creatures at all, they were ordinary people. The hallucinations caused by his addiction distorted his perception, leading him to commit horrific acts of violence. As he processes this revelation, the screen slowly pulls back, emphasizing his despair before the game concludes. The director's cut version adds more depth to this grim narrative. By meeting specific conditions during the gameplay, players can unlock 2 additional endings, both exploring the tragic aftermath of David's breakdown. In Ending 2, David is arrested and interrogated, claiming he remembers nothing of his crimes but clearly expressing guilt over his actions. And in Ending 3, which is the worst ending yet, after his arrest, a newspaper article reveals the extent of the murders David committed under the drug's influence. He is committed to a psychiatric ward for long-term treatment. In the final haunting scene, a guard performing his rounds checks on David's cell. Upon peering through the viewing window, he witnesses a disturbing sight. David has taken his own life, unable to cope with the overwhelming guilt and trauma. This bleak conclusion is a raw commentary on addiction, the loss of self-control, and the devastating consequences substance abuse can have on not just the individual but those around them. This is probably one of the best Half-Life mods ever made. It's incredibly haunting. lcddem is a fan game inspired by Yume Nikki, released in 2010. The player controls Chie, a girl confined to her room for reasons unknown, reflecting the surreal and melancholic atmosphere of its predecessor. Following the dream exploration mechanics of Yume Nikki, the gameplay revolves around Chie exploring dream worlds filled with strange visuals and haunting environments. Each area is connected to her psyche, with various objects scattered throughout that the player must collect to progress. The sense of isolation and dread permeates every part of the experience, emphasizing a lot of fear. The mystery surrounding Chie's isolation is central to the narrative. The game's creator, Kurumba, later requested that all content related to lcddem be removed from the internet, fueling speculation about the game's possible connections to personal trauma. As the game reaches its final moments, Chie is forced to leave her room. Upon doing so, she encounters a disturbing scene, a bloodied corpse, presumed to be her mother, lying on the floor of a dark room. In a panic, Chie attempts to wake up from this nightmare by pinching her cheek, an action often used in the game to return to the waking world. But this time it fails. She remains trapped, realizing that this horror is her reality. The ending serves as a metaphor for the inescapable nature of traumatic experiences, emphasizing that no matter how deep someone retreats into dreams or fantasy, reality will always persist. At least that's the way I interpreted it. It also includes very disturbing imagery. It is just really well made. I don't know why the creator wanted it to be removed from public view, but I guess that just adds to the game's mystique, and yeah. Disgaea 2 is a tactical role-playing game developed and published by Nippon Ichi Software for the PlayStation 2 console. In Disgaea 2, you control Adele, the last remaining human in the world after the Demon King Senin cursed the land, turning all humans into demons who gradually lose their memories. Adele, determined to prevent his family from fully transforming into demons, has trained extensively to confront the Demon King. In an attempt to summon Zenin through a ritual, the spell fails, and instead he summons Rosaline, the daughter of the Demon King. Despite the setback, Adele's goal remains the same. He vows to protect Rosaline and return her to her father while staying focused on his mission. To understand the game's bad ending, it's important to focus on Adele's goal and his evolving relationship with Rosaline. Initially, they are strangers who treat each other poorly, but over time, they develop a bond of friendship and mutual care. Throughout the game, Adele is also accompanied by his younger siblings, Hanako and Taro, who deeply admire and look up to him. These relationships play a crucial role later in the narrative. The game features a karma system that influences the story's outcome. If Adele commits 99 crimes and kills 99 of his allies, the bad ending route will be locked in. During the final battle, Rosaline confronts her father and defeats him. However, in a trance-like state, she challenges Adele's party to a fight. After her defeat, Rosaline collapses in a pool of her own blood, lifeless. Adele, devastated by his failure to protect her, watches as Rosaline's body vanishes. Suddenly, he becomes possessed by Zenon. Letting out a blood-curdling scream, Adele freezes in place. Concerned, his siblings call out to him, only for Adele to turn and attack them in a shocking twist. What makes this ending truly disturbing isn't just that Adele attacks his siblings, it's how he does it. A critical note, this ending is exclusive to the Japanese version as it contains content considered highly inappropriate and was censored in other regions. In this version, rather than using weapons or punches as typical in the game, the sound effect used is unmistakably the chilling noises of flesh being torn apart. Under Zenon's control, Adele is forced to devour his younger siblings alive, those he had fought to protect and cherish throughout the adventure. Each attack is accompanied by dialogue reflecting the siblings' agonizing final moments, paired with the gruesome audio of flesh being consumed.
我は孤独なる。
Seriously, it's pretty disturbing. This unsettling and graphic ending feels incredibly out of place for a game rated suitable for audiences 13 and older, making it even more disturbing in contrast to the rest of the game's tone. Alright, that was the video. Those were the video game endings that I wanted to talk about. If you enjoyed and actually learned something new, make sure to subscribe. It really helps me out, believe it or not. It helps me make more videos like this. And yeah, before I end the video, let me get the elephant out of the room. I know I haven't uploaded in a while. I've just been busy with some stuff. I also got a little bit unmotivated, but I'm back now. And I'm gonna try to lock in for this winter break for sure. I'm sorry I left like that. I'm gonna try to not do that again. Yeah. There's many more games that again I left out of this video, this final script, because I wanted to choose the more disturbing ones, but there's still a lot of obscure dark endings that I could talk about, so if you want a video with those, like a volume 2 of this video, just tell me in the comments. Anyways, thanks for watching, see you in the next video.